Eliza had never imagined her life would become this. Still, at just 23, she felt older than her years. The fluorescent buzz of the diner where she worked double shifts echoed in her ears long after she clocked out. Tips were meager, rent overdue, and dreams, those bright, fluttering things, had faded into quiet survival. Her world had narrowed into work, bills, and a solitude that crept into the corners of her heart. It was during a Sunday community event at a local park, something she volunteered for just to get a free meal, that she first saw him. Standing near the storytelling booth, an older black man with dignified posture and a calm presence scanned the crowd with eyes that seemed to see asterisk through asterisk people. He wasn't flashy or commanding, but there was something about him that drew Eliza in. They ended up sitting at the same table during lunch. She picked at her macaroni while he, with deliberate grace, unwrapped a sandwich and offered her a napkin. "You seem lost in thought," he said, his voice low, smooth, and rich like aged mahogany. Eliza blinked. No one spoke to her like that. "I guess I'm always in thought," she replied, half smiling. "It's free, at least." He chuckled, a deep, comforting sound. "Sometimes, thinking is the only space we truly own." His name was Kofi. He told her he was visiting from Ghana, in town for a few months to attend a cultural exchange program hosted by a nearby university. He had been a teacher, now retired, and spent his time traveling, observing, writing. He spoke with intentional pauses, each word thoughtful, as if nothing he said was accidental. Eliza, guarded by nature, found herself surprisingly open in his company. She talked about her childhood in Michigan, her mother's passing, the way her father disappeared into himself after the funeral. She spoke of trying to finish school but running out of money, of waitressing to get by, and of how alone the world felt sometimes. Kofi didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. He simply listened, nodding slowly, occasionally meeting her gaze with a gentleness that unnerved her. "You carry more weight than someone your age should," he finally said. "But you carry it well." Something in her chest cracked. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was recognition, as if someone had seen past the blur of her life and noticed the details. When the event ended, Kofi stood and offered his hand. "Perhaps we can talk again," he asked. "Only if you feel like sharing more of your thoughts." Eliza hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." As he walked away, something unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. Not quite hope. Not yet. But the kindling of curiosity, about him, about herself, and about whatever it was that had just begun to stir between them. She didn't know it yet, but this conversation would change everything. Over the next few weeks, Eliza and Kofi met often. At the park, in quiet cafes, even once in the university library where he liked to read. Each encounter was unhurried, like the turning of soft pages in a treasured book. Their conversations meandered through literature, philosophy, family, and fear. She found herself waiting for his messages, anticipating his stories, craving the stillness his presence seemed to bring into her chaotic life. Despite their vast age gap, the connection didn't feel unnatural. Kofi spoke to her like an equal, yet offered a depth and wisdom she found grounding. He never tried to impress her. His stories of growing up in Ghana, losing his wife to cancer, and raising 2 daughters alone were told with humility. He wasn't a man trying to be young again. He was a man who had lived star. For Eliza, that meant something. Most men her age were either emotionally unavailable or endlessly distracted. Kofi was intentional. When he listened, he made her feel like her words had weight. She began opening up more, about her fear of turning out like her father, about the exhaustion that came with pretending she had everything under control. One crisp autumn afternoon, they sat on a bench beneath a canopy of golden leaves. Kofi handed her a small, leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," he said simply. "Not all burdens need to be carried in silence." She traced her fingers over the soft cover, surprised by the gift, and more surprised by the lump forming in her throat. No one had ever given her something so personal, something that acknowledged her inner world. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know your silence. And I know you don't belong to it." Something shifted then. A subtle undercurrent that had been quietly growing between them now surfaced. His hand brushed hers, not by accident. And though the moment was brief, it lingered in her skin for hours after they parted. That night, Eliza sat in her apartment, journal open on her lap, staring at a blank page. Her fingers hovered over the pen, uncertain. Then, without fully realizing it, she began to write, not about work or money, but about him star. Days turned into weeks. People began to notice. Her co-workers teased her about the mystery man who sometimes walked her to the bus stop. Her landlord raised an eyebrow when Kofi helped carry groceries into her apartment. But the comments were nothing compared to the phone call from her cousin. "You're dating an old man? Eliza, are you serious?" The words stung. Not because they were cruel, but because they echoed the one doubt she hadn't yet confronted herself. What was this, really? And what did it say about her? The next time she saw Kofi, her voice trembled as she asked, "Do you ever wonder if this connection is wrong?" Kofi looked at her, then said, without hesitation, "I only wonder why something so real should ever be questioned." Eliza didn't have an answer, but she felt the question settle deeper into her bones. By the time winter crept into the city, Eliza had stopped explaining her relationship to others. Every attempt to justify it seemed to shrink what they had into something smaller than it truly was. The world outside couldn't see the slow-burning affection, the quiet steadiness of Kofi's presence, or the way she was slowly becoming someone stronger, someone seen. Still, she couldn't ignore the whispers. Her father, who rarely called, finally did, only to say, "I don't understand what's happening to you." Her best friend, Rachel, pulled away entirely. "You say it's love, but it sounds like a phase," she texted one night, as if Eliza were indulging a whim instead of walking a path she hadn't expected but couldn't deny. Despite the isolation, Eliza pressed forward. With Kofi, everything felt more real than any love she'd known. He respected her space, encouraged her creativity, and challenged her to believe in something beyond just surviving. Then, one snowy evening, Kofi asked her to marry him. There was no grand gesture, no ring hidden in dessert or a trail of rose petals. Instead, he held her hand across a candlelit table, his voice soft but steady. "Let me be your partner in this life, Eliza. Let's make something together, something honest." She stared at him, emotions colliding in her chest. Fear, hope, longing. But above all, clarity. This man had given her peace. A mirror. A new beginning. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." News of their engagement traveled quickly, and with it, a wave of criticism she hadn't braced for. People she hadn't spoken to in years messaged her with disbelief. Her aunt cornered her at the grocery store and hissed, "He's old enough to be your father. What are you thinking?" But the ceremony went ahead. It was intimate, no grand venue, no elaborate dress. Just a quiet hall decorated with simple white flowers, a small gathering of Kofi's friends from the cultural center, and two of Eliza's co-workers who'd stayed loyal through the noise. Kofi wore a traditional Kent cloth, proud and regal. Eliza, in a vintage ivory dress borrowed from a thrift store, looked radiant in a way she'd never felt before. When they exchanged vows, their words weren't polished but deeply personal, spoken like secrets only they could understand. After the wedding, as guests filtered out and the lights dimmed, Kofi took Eliza's hand and guided her to a nearby bench beneath a string of dim fairy lights. "There's something I've not told you," he said. Her heart skipped. "What is it?" He looked at her with a blend of tenderness and gravity. "I didn't just come to America to visit. I came looking for someone. And I didn't expect it to be you." Eliza stared, breath caught between fear and curiosity. "Looking for who?" He didn't answer. "Not yet." He only smiled and whispered, "You'll understand soon." And just like that, the mystery deepened. The morning after the wedding, Eliza awoke to sunlight pouring through gauzy curtains and the sound of Kofi quietly humming from the kitchen. For a moment, the world was perfect, still and warm, as if nothing could disturb the delicate balance they had created. But the words from the night before still lingered in her mind. "I came looking for someone." She stepped into the kitchen, wrapping her robe tighter around her frame. Kofi stood barefoot, brewing coffee, the scent rich and grounding. He looked at her with the same serene warmth he always did, but today, it felt heavier. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured. He nodded slowly, pouring her a cup. "I thought you might." They sat in silence for a long moment, until he finally spoke, his voice low and careful. "Years ago, before I left Ghana, I received a letter from a woman in the States. She said she had a daughter who might be mine." Eliza blinked. "You think I'm—" "No," he said quickly, shaking his head. "That's not what I'm saying. But the letter came from your town. From a woman named Marla." Eliza's heart dropped. That was her mother's name. "I never responded," Kofi continued. "I was married at the time. I didn't know what to believe. But after my wife passed, I couldn't stop wondering. So I came here. I didn't expect anything. Just answers." A heavy silence fell between them. Eliza stared at the table, her mind scrambling through memories, timelines, the familiar ache of not knowing who her real father was. Her mother had always been vague, evasive. "Did she send any proof?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No. Just a photo of a little girl, maybe 5 or 6. Curly hair. Big eyes. A name, Eliza." Her fingers trembled around her mug. "I didn't seek you out to find a daughter," Kofi said gently. "I met you not knowing who you were. I still don't know, not for certain. But my heart, it didn't recognize a child. It recognized a woman. A soul I felt drawn to." Tears blurred her vision. It was too much, too tangled, too sudden. "But if there's a chance," she began. "Then we'll find the truth," he said. "Together. I'll take a test. So will you. If we're blood, we'll face that. If we're not, we'll face that too. No matter what, I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." Eliza nodded, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if the truth would bring peace or pain. Weeks later, the test came back. No biological relation. The relief was overwhelming, but not because it validated their love. It was because it gave them permission to keep writing the story they had already begun. And from that moment on, they did, with no apologies, no fear, and no more looking back.